Good morning everyone. Basahin lang natin yung History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Ngayon, maiksi lang itong babasahin natin kasi bukas is topic number 14 na tayo, the religious schism. The religious schism. So, bukas na yan. Topic number 14. So, ang last pala ng topic 13 is yung paragraph end of the resistance. So, dito tayo. Today is 07 January 2023. History of the Filipino People, Part 3, Reform and Revolution. Topic number 13, the Filipino-American Hostilities. Paragraph end of the resistance. Mabilis lang to guys. Hindi ko kasi isang paragraph lang babasahin natin. Basa. End of the resistance. Pero balikan ko yung yung Barbarous Acts. Kasi grabe talaga yung dinanas natin. Pero dito muna tayo sa last paragraph. End of the resistance. Though thousands of Filipino soldiers surrendered as a result of the American peace propaganda and their brutal treatment of captured guerrillas, some military commanders refused to lay down their arms. General Miguel Malvar took over the leadership of the Filipino government, or what remained of it, and harassed the Americans by his guerrilla tactics. In summer, General Vicente Lucban resorted to ambushing American soldiers and withdrawing after killing or wounding them. Angered at this tactic, General Jacob Smith ordered the massacre of all men and children below 10 years, with the result that the province became a howling wilderness. But the relentless campaign of the Americans led to the capture of Lucban on February 27, 1902. With his capture, the resistance in summer collapsed. 2 months later, on April 16, General Malvar of Batangas surrendered to the enemy. The resistance movement now completely collapsed. It is true that some patriotic Filipinos led by Macario Sakay continued the resistance and even established a Tagalog Republic with headquarters in the Sierra Madre near Manila, but his resistance was not serious enough to endanger the American rule. The capture of Aguinaldo ended an era and at the same time opened another behind him. Aguinaldo left the ashes of a past that became embedded in the memory as the fanatical struggle of an enslaved people to win freedom and independence through blood and tears. So, hanggang dyan lang siya guys. Bukas na yung topic number 14. Pero balikan ko yung malaki pa naman ang oras. Mabalikan ko yung Barbarous Acts kasi talagang grabe yun guys. Ito, Barbarous Acts. Barbarous Acts. Binalikan ko lang to kasi kahapon natin to binasa. Pero talaga naman grabe yung dinanas talaga nung araw. Pag nai-imagine mo yung giyera pala guys, sobrang sobrang nakakatakot na parang hindi mo isipin na mararanasan mo talaga. Kaya swerte tayo sa panahon natin, wala tayong nasa peace ang ating bansa, kumbaga sana walang giyera-giyera. Barbarous Acts. War has always been uncivilized and although Barbarous Acts. War has always been uncivilized and although its weapons have vastly improved with the advance of science, its techniques have not changed radically from those of less civilized ages. In almost all cases, brutality as an instrument to weaken the enemy's resistance is practiced on both sides of the fence. The Filipino-American War was not an exception, particularly because the combatants belonged to two different races and civilizations. In judging Filipino brutality, however, one must remember that the Philippines, having been the victims of American apostasy and imperialistic designs, disguised as benevolent and altruistic, have little to answer for their behavior towards the Americans, for they considered the latter not only as traitors to their cause but also as interlopers and an obstacle to their legitimate desire for freedom and independence. This is not to justify Filipino brutality committed as a defensive measure, but simply to explain why the Filipinos had to be brutal to the Americans who came to the Philippines purportedly to help them win their independence from Spain, but who actually have imperialistic designs on their country. Tama nga naman, oh. Kasi akala natin tutulungan tayo ng American sa doon, 'di ba nga sinakop tayo ng Spaniards. So akala natin tutulungan tayo ng Americans, pero yun pala sinakop rin tayo ng Americans. wala tayong choice nung araw kundi sakopin pa rin kahit na lumaban tayo. The sources for analysis of these brutalities came from Filipino participants and eyewitnesses and from the Americans themselves who, in a moment of moral agony, divulged the details and particulars of American brutalities in letters to their parents and friends and in testimonies before American investigating bodies. When the American military found to their discomfiture that the Filipinos were a stubborn people, they resorted to extreme measures to soften the Filipinos' will to fight, said an author. Some of them Americans resorted to tortures the likes of which had not been witnessed in the Philippines before. The cruelty of some Americans came to the knowledge of the American public through articles and letters written by soldiers who had seen such brutalities perpetrated upon the Filipinos. One such article appeared in Philadelphia, January 2, 1902, alleging that the American soldiers and their stooges, the Macabebe Scouts, used the water cure almost invariably to loosen the tongues of the helpless Filipino in order to force them to reveal the movements, weapons, size, and methods of the guerrillas. The cure consisted in forcing a man to lie flat on his back, his mouth forced open by a stick or bayonet, and in some instances, a cartridge case. Then water, usually salty or dirty, was poured. Yak. Parang tinutorture ka guys sa maruming tubig. Sa'yo. Then water, usually salty or dirty, was poured into his mouth until his stomach was distended. The water was disgorged from the stomach by making a chair of it for the soldiers to sit on. The process was repeated until the victim shouted, "Hold, enough." There was a variety in the mode of torture. Least common was the rope cure, in which a long piece of rope was wrapped around the neck and torso of the victim. A stick was placed between the coils of rope and slowly twisted to give the effect of a garrote. Sometimes beating up a victim was resorted to until he became blue in the face. Two American officers, Lieutenant Alva Perkins and Captain George Brundle, were charged with and tried for willfully and cruelly causing 6 Filipinos to be hung by the neck for a period of 10 seconds, causing them to suffer bodily pains. They were found guilty and reprimanded for their sadistic efforts. In their desperation, the American soldiers turned arsonists, burning whole towns in order to force the guerrillas to the open. One such infamous case of extreme barbarity occurred in the town of Balangiga, Samar in 1901-1902. Napaka-famous talaga nitong Balangiga sa Balangiga, Samar guys, kasi pati mga bata talagang talagang pinapatay nila. Balangiga was a peaceful little port off the southern tip of Samar, but it was garrisoned by Americans who could not pinpoint the nerve center of guerrilla activities in the town. Many American soldiers who garrisoned the town were veterans of the Boxer Rebellion and had participated in the capture of Peking. The American soldiers were busy one morning taking their breakfast when suddenly they were attacked by Filipinos in their employ. The church bells rang, and Soon, about 180 Filipinos fell upon the Americans, many of whom were killed instantly. The other Americans who tried to escape were bullied to death, while others were hacked from the nose to the throat. The news of the guerrilla attack gave rise to pain cries throughout the United States, and the President Theodore Roosevelt gave orders to pacify Samar. Assigned to the task was General J.K. Smith. "I want no prisoners," he said firmly. "I wish you to kill and burn. The more you burn and kill, the better it will please me." Forthwith, he ordered that Samar be transformed into a howling wilderness. Orders were also issued to shoot down anybody capable of carrying arms. By capable of carrying arms, General Smith meant to include even boys 10 years old, for the latter and carry rifles and swing bullets. In 6 months, Palangiga became a howling wilderness. Nakita niyo na guys, pati 10 years old. In 6 months, Palangiga became a howling wilderness. The barbarity which General Smith subdued the people of Samar touched the conscience of the American people. After the end of the bloody campaign, Smith was court-martialed and retired from the service. Another author and American said of American brutalities, Lieutenant Basil Thomas of the 35th Infantry was convicted of striking prisoners, one of whom was lying on the ground and bleeding from the mouth. The officer was reprimanded and fined $300. Just before Mr. Roth took office, Robert Collins of the Associated Press was permitted to cable, "There has been, according to Otis himself, and the personal knowledge of everyone here, a perfect orgy of looting and wanton destruction of property." Private Jones of the 11th Cavalry wrote that his troop, upon encountering a wedding party, fired into the trunk, killing the bride and 2 men and wounding another woman and 2 children. A captain and lieutenant of the 7th Regiment were tried for hanging 6 Filipinos by their necks for 10 seconds. Ayan, nabasa natin kanina. Causing them to suffer great bodily pain. After the words were changed to mental anguish, the officers were found guilty and sentenced to reprimands. In April, the mayors of San Miguel and San Nicolas were beaten to death by rattan rods. The episode leaked out when 2 officers of the American regiment reported to the governor and to General Young, and its July 26 issue, the New York World, carried the story. "Our soldiers here end their resorts to horrible measures with the natives. Captains and lieutenants are sometimes judges, sheriffs, and executioners. I don't want any more prisoners sent into Manila," was the verbal order from the Governor-General 3 months ago. It is now the custom to avenge the death of an American soldier by burning to the ground all the houses and killing right and left the natives, who are only suspects. Brutality, however, was not an American monopoly. The Filipinos too, fighting with their back to the wall to preserve what was legitimately their own, equaled and, in some cases, exceeded the American sergeants' penchant for blood, said the Filipino author already mentioned. The guerrillas, in violation of Aguinaldo's orders and circulars, treated captured Americans with barbaric cruelty. Noses and ears were lopped off, and the bleeding wounds seasoned with salt. Yung sakit niyan, guys, so yung wounds mo lalagyan mo ng asin. In some cases, American prisoners were buried alive. Kicking, slapping, spitting, and the faces of American prisoners were common. The hatred of the Americans being such that the guerrillas forgot, or conveniently forgot, Aguinaldo's injunctions regarding the good treatment to be accorded the prisoners. Thus, the brutality of the conqueror, or as an old veteran of the revolution called the interloper, was matched by Filipino brutality. So, yun. Saklap, guys. Nabasa na natin yun. So, bukas na tayo yung topic number 14, the religious schism. So, yun. Bye, everyone. God bless.